all set up here. Hopefully everything is streaming. I'm going to double check here. Yes, we are. That's good. We got 2 more minutes. So we'll wait for the community to come in. Ms. Charlotte, I will just, I know you've probably been speaking with Cherie or Tawana. They are both traveling, so I am your stand-in host at this point in time. I'm the admin of the group, so I will be conducting this conversation, which I'm really looking forward to. Our community is coming in. They're going to pop in. We are live streaming across all of our platforms, so we'll get all the questions from different areas. Hello, Ms. Sharnetta, how are you? All right, ladies, we are going to begin. It is now 6 o'clock my time, so make sure everybody's in. Good evening, everyone. This is the 10K Project, and I am Talisha Shine. I am the admin and resident techie here, and we are a community of retail investors that invest in Black businesses. So we are the largest community at this point, and we have a very special guest this afternoon for you. At this point, we have been talking about this, if you've seen it in our Facebook group, about credit scores for startups. And we know we like to support our founders, and we always get those questions during our Bet on Black pitches of like, how do we evaluate these founders? You know, people come with all different criteria. People want like little checklists, and we see so many of them, and we want to be able to evaluate them succinctly and also going with our gut feeling for our portfolios, but well for that structure that we're looking for. And these ladies have developed something that you will be very, very intriguing to see how that works. So we'd like to invite our guest. So if you could introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit more about your business.
Yeah, my name is Janae Gamage, and I am the CEO and co-founder of Foresight, and I'll let Charlotte introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Charlotte, and I am the CTO and co-founder of Foresight.
So you ladies, tell us exactly what made you come up with the idea for Foresight.
Oh, man. For me, I believe that the strongest ecosystems are strong because they invest and support diverse and innovative ideas, and that happens by supporting diverse and innovative founders. And currently, that is not happening. And Charlotte and I kind of have the same background. We've been all over the ecosystem, from founder to consultant to builder. And we've seen the same gaps, and we hear the statistic that 9 out of 10 startups fail, and then as we dig deeper, then you realize that 7.5 out of venture-backed startups fail. So this thing that's kind of spread around that is, well, startups are failing because they can't get capital, doesn't seem to be true when we look at those numbers. So as we dug deeper and did our discovery, we figured out it's really a process problem, a fundraising process problem. Currently, pitch decks and the way business is done, email intros, even getting on meetings and webinars like these don't truly, they fail to accurately present the true value of a startup and its risk and the feasibility and the entire process. On the support side, when it comes to sourcing and evaluating startups, is super clunky, and it's siloed, and it's based on who you know and not your actual business idea. So investors are making decisions based on intangibles like their gut or a founder's ability to present and how charismatic they are. So that's super risky. But also it largely accounts for why raising capital is so inequitable right now. And it's just a problem we wanted to solve.
So how did you first come across that? Like, when did you, or have you pitched, or what were you seeing in each of your spaces that caused you to say, like, okay, how do we formulaically attack this problem?
You want me to answer, Charlotte?
Either one of you can go right ahead.
Go ahead, Charlotte. You know,
yeah,
I'll go on with my tangent.
Well, we're going to talk about it, so we're going to get into it because I need to know as well.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I was seeing a lot of founders in a consulting space who on one side were trying to build the business and trying to figure out the strategy of what they were building. And they were needing a lot of help. And it was because they were first time, because they had never done this before. They were kind of learning as they were going. And so if any of you have ever tried to do that, there's definitely going to be gaps in which you don't really realize you're hitting or that you're kind of avoiding, because again, you don't know what you don't know. And sometimes, you've got to ask the right questions to the right people to figure out that you've, missed something. And so then when they kind of get to the point where they're fundraising, now they're getting told no. And now they're getting told that like, there's something wrong with, their strategy, or there's something wrong with their business idea. And, it's kind of a sad situation to be in when you're, desperate for money and you're trying to build something that you really want to be successful. And now you're being told that like you can't get that capital, and now it's back to the drawing board. So that was what I was seeing a lot of these founders, and then that would cause them to spin their wheels and then start to fail because they don't have the capital, and now they're super confused and they don't know what resources they need. And it was something I was seeing over and over and over again from a variety of different founders and variety of different industries. So it definitely felt like a process problem and not specifically like, oh, this is just happening to one founder.
And Janae, what about you? Where did you see it most come up?
I've been a founder for about 20 years now. No, I'm not 50. I started when I was 14. So I've always known the quote unquote capital gap, and I've experienced that firsthand. As I grew as a founder and started helping other founders as a consultant and working with ecosystem stakeholders and organizations, the biggest thing I saw is that they want to help, and there is capital available and there are resources available. But what was happening is the wrong opportunities were even coming in front of them. So it's hard to gauge where to put resources and how to support founders if they can't articulate the value that they have in the business that they're building, because founders, 9 times out of 10 are not this charismatic presentation guru who can put all the best information on a slide and you totally get it. And there's just so much gray area around what a founder should even be saying to an investor. They have to have, 35 different pitches based on who they're talking to, correct, where they're talking to them at, in an elevator, at a pitch competition, on this webinar. What am I saying? Why should I say it? What do they need to hear for me to make that connection and say, oh yes, I should, lean into supporting this founder. So there's just such a huge disconnect. That was the problem that I initially set out to solve. And as we dug deeper and we continued to ideate, Charlotte and I, we figured out that, well, there needs to be some kind of standard model. And even talking to larger organizations like banks who are wanting to invest in startups, but don't really have the systems in place because they're using traditional loan processes for small businesses, and they need collateral and capital and all these things to say, yes, this is worth the investment. Working with them, knowing that they also want to support, is just like, okay, we just need a tool that helps everybody connect and that helps them understand what the other one has and if they should even be having conversations. So that's where the perspective that I got from just my experiences.
That's awesome. And so how does your tool formulate? How does it actually work? Because you have two different stakeholders. You have the founders themselves that are looking to say, hey, I have this idea, but how do I present it correctly and succinctly every time. And again, it does have to be that customization, because sometimes it is a 30-second pitch, whereas you're in a competition or you come to the Bet on Black pitch and you get, ample time to say everything you need to say. And then you have the other stakeholder, which are the potential investors, looking at them. So the VC funds, the personal investors, as well as banks. So how did you gauge a score that could work for both of those, all of those stakeholders?
Yeah, so the standards were technically already out there. Foresight is, I don't want to say it like this or minimize all the great work that Charlotte is doing. So Charlotte, just cover your ears.
We're not going to do that.
But Foresight is simply just a due diligence tool that augments all these processes. The same process that everyone goes through, whether you're a founder, whether you're an accelerator, whether you're a VC firm, whether you are a bank, whether you're a policymaker. It is the same due diligence that has to be done to determine whether or not this founder and this business is a right fit for allocation. So we're adding a little science and tech, because we're using behavioral science and AI to kind of de-risk that process, which in turn, just kind of changes or betters the process of connecting and evaluating and supporting and funding a startup. And not only does Foresight connect the right opportunities to the right investors, similar to, like, again, Charlotte, close your ears, Tinder or Bumble. It ensures, like, it's as simple as that. That is the technology that I feel is the most relatable. But it ensures the introductions are happening at the right time with the right people. So the algorithm that we created determines like instant investability and feasibility scores for early stage startups. It replaces, or what we hope, it replaces the pitch deck with a qualitative scoring model, and that enables these organizations to supplement their existing sourcing and diligence process. And that process becomes objective, transparent, unbiased, and expedient, and they can really analyze the opportunity. And they also have an opportunity to look at the founders that are building it. We've created, as part of our report, something called Founder Mechanics, and it breaks down the successful traits of an entrepreneur, which I'll let Charlotte get more into that. But I believe that's our unique value proposition, I guess I would say. And what makes our algorithm unique is we're not only looking at the business idea and how it fits in the industry and pairing it with, data, real-time data and historical data, but we're also looking at the founding team and the founder fit. So I'll let Charlotte get into Founder Mechanics.
Yeah, so what we're trying to create is that ability for a founder and a founding team to understand, who do they have, and what areas of kind of that, like, builder model already exist, and kind of doubles down on why this founding team is going to be successful with this business idea. So we're kind of breaking it down into three separate sections. The biggest one is kind of, how do you drive and build things? There's always the CEO and the visionary, and that person who has the great idea and is really able to articulate it and understands kind of the long-term strategy. And then there's always an operations person who is kind of taking that and breaking it down into smaller pieces, smaller timelines. How do we get this actually complete? And then there's a third builder or executor. It's just usually sometimes a CTO or someone in that space who's really able to then build and get things done. And then there's a secondary piece of that really talks about, what kind of knowledge do you have? I think that's always a big piece of how investors and how other people see you as a founding team, is like, do you actually have the knowledge to be able to go into a market and have that deep understanding of, like, how does this market work? How does this industry work? So we also figure out a way to kind of articulate and quantify what that knowledge is. And then the last piece is really about the purpose of a founder, a purpose of a founding team. I think that some of that can be very much data-driven, and sometimes that can be very much empathy and people-driven. And so how do we kind of figure out how to articulate all of those things as strengths and as things that kind of help mold a team and help bring an idea to fruition?
It's interesting, because now this is where I think I like the empirical aspect of it, because I've been a CTO, and that's what I like. I like that, really, just give me the data. That's all I want.
Yeah.
But most people, and I would say coming from a venture studio, they like the storytelling. They want to know that I just need to know your story. And here we do that as well. We give our founders the ability to tell us how it became. I always say that's the architecture. How did you come up with this? How did it work? And that's that touchy-feely thing that people want. So going from a storytelling epic to an imperial kind of just give me the data. How do you merge that within that? Like, how do you balance those things in this format through your platform?
Yeah, I really think that that's kind of why there's like those, how I kind of divide it up into 3 layers is that I feel with a lot of other personality tests or ways that they kind of evaluate people is that like all of those things are all like facets of one another instead of kind of like layers in which you are of a person. So that is really why I think kind of having the purpose and the empathy or the data driven is like really kind of like how you continue to like hit and process things. It doesn't necessarily mean that like if you're data driven, you have to be an executor. That can be someone who is, really thinking about the vision, but is also thinking about like data and trends and really understanding all of that kind of like high level market stuff. But it's still, that visionary and is thinking long term, how do I see that vision? So I think really being able to create those kind of layers to a person versus like which one bucket do you fit in, kind of help make that process and that understanding of a person evolve a little bit further.
That's really interesting because I think that has a lot to do with, again, being able to present. I know, from that founder perspective of like, how do I convey the idea as succinctly as possible, giving all the details, because again, we do want that information. I think that information is important. And from the investor standpoint, some of them are really looking for that. They're like keyed in, they're waiting for you to say that one word to click on. They're not, it's like blah, 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 the Charlie Brown kind of thing. And then they hear the word they want and they're like, yep, that's what I wanted to hear. And if they don't hear it, they kind of just ignore everything else. So we've gone through that kind of process. And I do think that's kind of encapsulated in all, founders would say that they've had that experience where they have that glassy eyed, like they didn't hear one word I said, but a score is a score. So now going to that, like, how do you communicate that score to a person or an investor who doesn't know what that score really is encompassing of? Like, how do you get them to understand that part?
Yeah. I mean, it's no surprise that early stage investors are using gambling metaphors to describe, calling we invest in the horse or we invest in the jockey. Like that's not, and which is more important, which is why we decided to, quantify both, because in the early stage of startup, should investors prioritize, an evaluation of the business model or the founding team? And then, what tech is going to be necessary for quantifying the aptitude of a founding team? Because there's the ability and the aptitude for me is 2 different things. Me and Charlotte were talking about this yesterday, intuition versus instinct. They feel the same, but they are totally different things. And they are traits that we evaluate when it comes to our founder mechanics on who has the ability to pull off certain things. Not only that, but how they will pull it off, what they will need in the team members and the gaps that they will have and pull it off, and predicting their propensity to build a successful startup. So that was very important to show that data. That's really what sets Foresight apart based on what's out there now.
That was my next question. So do you have any competition with regard to this, to your platform at this moment? Do you think there's somebody out here that's doing similar or something that's kind of analogous to what you're doing? And what are you bringing to that space that you believe is different?
Of course. I mean, there are some big ones. They focus on different things like data, PitchBook, Crunchbase, Deal Room, things like that are kind of about the process, more about sourcing for investors. Our vision is much bigger than the fundraising process. Our vision is, our long-term vision is more in the ecosystem mapping. If everyone is familiar with that. But
I would like you to expand upon that, because that's something that, again, I think is really important. And what we like to, I think we are the filming ground for our Bet on Black pitch is that just that. It kind of is that ecosystem where we're breeding the actual founder and the investor in the same space. So if you can go into eco mapping, that'd be really helpful.
Yeah, so essentially an eco map is just as Foresight as a platform is just centralizing all the information and resources, organizations, people, and opportunities within a given ecosystem. So we'll have that as the baseline of our platform. Think LinkedIn, Facebook, all your social media sites that are free to log on. And but what would be different is there's a qualitative scoring model applied to these businesses, and there's intelligent matching going on. So if, as far as a user story, as a founder, if I got on the Foresight onto the platform, set up my profile, and just got on the platform, I would have visibility of my ecosystem, and I will be intelligently matched with the resources and opportunities and people that I should be speaking to at the current stage of my business. So there's no way that I would be matched with an investment firm that invests in fintech companies, but in Series A, right? I don't meet the criteria. And that's the largest disconnect within ecosystems, is people are talking and networking, and sometimes it's at the wrong time. And it just doesn't matter at that time, and there's missed opportunities. And all it takes is that one conversation that comes at the wrong time, and then, you don't get access to that. So our long-term vision is ecosystem mapping for ecosystems globally. And if you look at our platform and our wireframes now, that's how it's built. But to enter the market, I would say, we do have some competition, of course. The number one being the status quo. Investors think that they know it all and they're experienced. And even though the the statistics prove that they are not doing a good job, it's going to be hard to get that product adoption with them, which is why we're targeting accelerators first. And we have our LOI set up with accelerators and banks and large enterprise corporations who just want the data of the startups looking to acquire innovative ideas and things like that. But hands down, to me, our team is what sets us apart from our competitors. I mean, Charlotte is brilliant, MIT graduate, startup consultant, software developer. I could go on and on.
That's awesome. So what do you think, Charlotte? What do you believe is your delineation in the product that you're building specifically? And more importantly, how does it impact our Black founders? Because again, that's where we really set the stage, because I think that the rubric is already laid out for us, and sometimes we fulfill it, and then all of a sudden it changes organically, just magically overnight. It becomes something brand new after we've done the 10 steps. So how do Black founders really leverage your platform with regard to who they need to be talking to, at what point they need to be talking to, and to really socialize and get their projects funded?
Yeah, I think Janae mentioned this a little bit about kind of the ecosystem mapping and kind of connecting to other opportunities. And although founders really like to think that capital is the biggest opportunity that they can find and take advantage of, I think another really big proponent is that support organization and accelerator models. A lot of those might have some non-dilutive and dilutive funding opportunities, but they might also have, human capital and programming and educational resources that are also really important, that are free and low cost. Both Janae and I do work in a support organization that does kind of offer some of those free education courses. And often they are like trying to find and scrape around, trying to find founders that fit into those categories. And currently it's really hard. You either meet a founder that's like way too early, that like in 6 months or in a year is going to be way past you, or they're already like way past you. So I think really having our tool in the market will allow for Black founders and all, underestimated and underrepresented founders have that ability to not just like know a person who has gone through a program and says that they need to apply, but now they kind of have that access of the ability to be like, okay, like I am kind of looking for any opportunity, anything that'll help me network, anything that'll help me get to more funds, get me to meet more people, and then have that direct access so that when they are ready, or like right before being ready, and they just need to, apply and like work on their pitch really quick, then they can get to that. And then that allows them to move forward faster than currently now, where, you just kind of have to know the right person who knows of a grant that's open and it's, closing in a week, and now you kind of get yourself in there. As far as competition is concerned, I think that we do have a lot of indirect competitors that are doing parts of what we're trying to do. And I think because of our backgrounds and understanding that, the ecosystem does kind of work as a whole, to kind of touch founders at different points in time, I think that's going to be another big thing that'll help make sure that we are capturing the market and we're successful.
So when are you set to launch?
I am currently building the MVP, hoping to get it done end of year in January, and then we'll be set to do pilots through February into the spring.
Okay. And what are your criteria for your pilot? Because we source everything. I said, we are the one-stop shop. The 10K is going to be your bridge in your ecosystem, because we have a wonderful community that really loves to support. And we have founders and investors, and even what we consider our expertise level, where we have the people who are the source, to run the machines that happen and those ventures. So we're looking to see what are you looking for so that we can help us help you.
Yeah, so founders, the more founders that we run through the algorithm, the better, of course. I would say certain demographics, but using founder demographics to predict success is probably the worst data point to be considered. So I'm going to say all founders. I will say that we would like a diverse type of founders to make sure that we can remove as much bias as possible. We would love intros to accelerators, decision makers within accelerators who can say yes to a pilot for their next cohort. It is a paid pilot. And then as well as we've been speaking with banks and anyone who can help us move conversations forward with banks as well that are interested in using Foresight to kind of bridge that gap into loaning money to startups as opposed to just small businesses. We are ready. So
we will definitely, I will be ensure to make sure we give those introductions that we have in our network for you to pull this off. And like I said, I think this is a very interesting, the concept is really interesting to me, because again, I think there is a need for some formulaic kind of approach, but it can't be all or nothing. I think that's where we can't replace that touchy-feeliness, because that is what people are looking for. And that truly, I think, is the showcase of a founder. Sometimes it is about that founder's grit and the team and all those things that come together, and the business model will shift. We've known that, and we've seen that specifically during the pandemic. People had to make radical shifts to, business models that had been, tried and tested, but that type of test came up and no one knew how to do that. So that's always something that we look forward to. But again, trying to merge these in the way that you have it done with, leveraging data to make sure this comes out, and your machine learning to, kind of enhance it, and making sure those trends and things go in there as well to give you that kind of formulaic approach, I think is really interesting. And I'd love to see it. And if I can help you in any way possible, I will. We'll have another conversation on this to make sure I get you in. Because like I said, being a part of a venture studio now, I see all kinds of things. And that is one of those things, like, how do you approach this? Even in our ideation phase, it becomes a really interesting thing from us just sitting there saying, okay, how do we even approach this? Should we even approach this? And sometimes it is just this works, or we have some kind of casting system that we look for of saying, okay, these are the things that we need. We need to make sure that the market is ready and all of those things. But sometimes you can get in your own way because your criteria is either too stringent or way too cumbersome. So sometimes you need an outside source to just, like, you need 10 things. You don't need 25 things to make that assessment and then be able to move. And I think your product will probably do that very well with regard to also helping pivots, because they get to see the feedback. I think feedback is really important. We get a lot of that in our Bet on Black pitches. Our community will hunt you down and give you all kinds of questions. And sometimes that actually enhances the product. And in your business model is always, I would say it's an organic thing, but at the same time, those internal conversations can be blinders, and that external feedback is always such a great thing to have. So I think you're onto something great, and we will love to help you. Yeah. So community, if you have any questions at this point, you can feel free to put them in the chat or in the QA section so we can ask them. We have a few here. I think I answered that question. That's not about the product, but. So how long have you been working on this?
Since February, March
Of this year?
Yes. Oh, we're moving fast.
But
You know, that's how I like to move. So
you got to do it.
our foresight score would be pretty good, but we can't run our own because it would be biased. If we sent you a high foresight score, I'm sure everyone would just be like, okay, guys.
So how do you calculate that score? Like, if you can give us a high level, we don't want the secret sauce, but what are the high points of how do you come across and how do you get the score?
So there's founder inputs, and then our data is combined into a weighted score. And so there's a questionnaire, financial projections, and different integrations to bring in your own system information. And then real-time industry data, and our data sources, if everyone is familiar, Startup Genome, Crunchbase, PitchBook, Dynata, and CB Insights, which create different outputs. So evaluation is created, of course, a foresight score or a rating. It's more like a risk rating for those that are looking at it. So we actually moved away from a score because we're trying to remove bias, and it just feels like hearing bias, hearing score, no matter what, no matter how much bias is removed, it just implies bias. I have to score a certain amount in order to be invested in, and that's not the case at all. What we're trying to show is a snapshot of your value, but even with the score, it could actually be contradictive or counterintuitive, sorry. So that's how it works from a high level.
Got it. Michael has a question. He says, don't banks have in-house staffing that does that kind of same type of work?
Yes, they do. They also have, Michael, if you go on your banking app, I'm sure you could apply for like an auto loan, like very simply, and they're just looking at your credit score. So what we're doing for banks is that system does not work for early stage startups. I mean, the system that VC funds have barely works. So the way that banks are set up to measure risk, every startup that applied would get denied, which is what is happening now. So what Foresight does is it kind of bridges that gap, because banks do want to invest in startups and they do recognize the opportunities there. We're kind of like pushing that along and like opening their risk up. So yes, they exist to a certain extent. It's very traditional and it does not work for startups.
And I will also add that, like, when you think about like a VC firm being able to assess startups, like they spend years of time like looking through startup deal flow and like really being able to understand and learn from other VCs about like what makes a good deal and what doesn't. So when you think about banks or other large corporations who want to now start investing in startups, they generally do not have someone that they're going to hire on to do that, or they don't have that prior knowledge to be able to assess a startup in a way that a VC or someone who's been in the startup ecosystem and has talked to founders and has seen successful companies would be able to do that assessment. So that's really why Foresight kind of ties into banks and other corporations, because now they don't have to spend years of time like learning about, what makes a founder great, what makes an idea great, and they can tie in investing in startups as to part of their kind of like day-to-day or week-to-week type of schedule.
And again, we're not replacing people. We are augmenting processes that already exist.
Will you be selling this as a service, or is this something that will be licensed to these individuals, or they have to come to you and say, hey, I want to push my deal flow through you? How are you setting that up?
So it depends on the user. For a founder, it would be as simple as logging on to an app, a web app. But for like banks and our enterprise level clients, that would be a license. And then VC firms, kind of the same as founders, but they have they pay for access to more data or, more risk, I guess, assessment. The better their selection improves, the more they pay, I guess is how I should say it.
Any more questions from the community? People are liking the idea.
Oh, great, good. I
This is
can't see
it.
anything. That's
Yeah.
good to hear. Yeah. We are raising around,
All right, well, are you doing it via equity crowdfunding?
No, we're looking for non-dilutive right now.
Okay, see that. Well, when you
crowdfunding.
decide that, you have a place to come to do so, because we will definitely be very interested in that at that point. So you just let us know when you're ready. We'll be ready for you.
Okay.
But thank you, ladies, so much for this conversation. Like I said, let people know how they can get in touch with you, if they follow you on social media, or if we have some founders in the group here that may want to get in touch with you. So how can they find you?
Can I put it in the chat? Will they be
Sure.
able to see it?
Mm-hmm.
All right. I just put the email, and our social media handle is Try4Sight on all channels.
All right. Yes.
And then I'm going to put our email, our website in here as well.
Thank you.
There is
Thanks,
a button.
Charlotte.
Yeah, there is a button on there for get early access, so you can sign up to our waiting list and get updates to your email.
Well, thank you again. And if you have any need for us, like I said, you have all of our contact information, so feel free. I will make sure you have mine. So we will get into this conversation, and hopefully we'll have you back and you can tell us more and how this is proceeding for you.
Absolutely. I just wanted to point out that was a perfect example of foresight. As you can see, on my founder mechanics, I'm the visionary, so I'm just like, yeah, follow us on social media. Carter is actually the specialist in architect traits, so she's like,
Me and Charlie got you.
Website, go on there and push
go here. Yeah,
look at our.
We're giving you the instructions. Go here, click here, put your information in, and send. Yeah, see, we got you. We know what to do.
It matters. It matters.
It's good. I always say we have visionaries. Cherie is a very strong visionary of the CEO. Like, she is our CEO. She comes up with this wonderful vision of the 10K project. It was wonderful and great. It takes a tactile person. I always say that was me. I was the CTO, because it takes, I always say I'm not the person who comes up with the Taj Mahal. I'm the person who gets it built. And that means, like, how much, wood do we need? How many stones do we need? How many people do we need? Do we need a union? Like, we think of those things. So it's great to have that. And we have Stefan here. He said he is a fellow founder and he'd love to connect. Well, you go right on ahead and you can watch this at any point that you want to. Make sure you go to their website, and this will be all on our social media, so you can rewatch it and hear all the great things from Foresight. So you make sure, there you go. Ms. Charlotte put that right back in there for you. Click on it and do the do. Well, thank you again, ladies, and you have a wonderful week, and we hope to hear from you soon.
All right. Thanks for having us.
You're welcome.